Hi, friends. Tony DeWitt here, Missouri appellate attorney and a guy who likes to make the law make sense on YouTube. Here's what we're discussing today. So, this is Holy Week, and I plan to spend a significant amount of my time in prayerful reflection of the gift that our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ gave to me. I am, as a result, probably not going to be putting out a large number of videos. I have to travel during the latter part of the week, so I wanted to throw up a couple here over the next couple of days that will be there for you over the weekend. But I do hope that you have an opportunity to spend Easter with your family and be with the people that you love and cherish the gift that we have been given. So today I'm going to talk to you about Sally. Now, Sally's not her real name. This happened about 22 years ago, I guess now. Doesn't seem like it was that long ago, but time flies when you're having fun. So Sally was one of those people who was young. She was around 21 years old. She had no credit. She was going to college. I think she was in a 2-year college for something like an LPN certificate, something like that. At any rate, she was working hard. She had a job. She worked part-time. She went to school full-time. But she needed a car, and she needed a car to get back and forth to school and back and forth to her job. Now, there are, I think in pretty much every state, there are these car dealerships that essentially prey on people who are young, who have no credit, and who are easily misled. Around here in my part of the country, we have these title pawn places where if you have the title to your car, you can pawn your car. What's really interesting about a lot of these title pawn places is that they have a car lot right next to them. Now, what do you suppose is on that car lot? It's all the cars that they've repossessed because they held the title to them. Well, you would think that people would look at one thing and look at the other thing and determine, maybe not the kind of place I want to go to borrow money. But nevertheless, people do that. Now, by the same token, there are these people who operate what I would call third-tier car places, third-tier car dealerships. They don't have anybody other than a basic mechanic, a guy who probably airs up the tires, maybe changes the oil, that kind of thing. They are not a full-service dealership. As a result, when they evaluate a car, when they do their 35-point inspection, they more or less, in many of these places, not all of them, but in many of these places, they do it like this. Oh yeah, it looks pretty good to me. And unfortunately, that was the place where our young Sally went to see about buying a car. Because she didn't have credit, she couldn't go to a regular dealership. Now, these places always advertise no credit check. They advertise that they can get anyone a ride. Note this well. There is always a catch. If it sounds too good to be true, it is. This place that we'll call Scammers Incorporated, they would sell the same vehicle 2 or 3 times. They would get a high down payment. So if the car was selling for, at that time, $5,000, they would get a $1,000 down payment, and they would say, you can pay us here every week X number of dollars. Now, the interest rate is probably close to 20% on that note. But if you need a car and this is the only place you think you can go to get it, you pay them the $1,000 and you make sure you get there every Friday to pay the note. Well, one Friday, Sally didn't get there to pay the note because her car had broken down. And she had it towed back to that dealership and she said something's wrong with it. And sure enough, there was something wrong with it. It was never going to run again. The engine had been blown because it was a bad car to begin with. And Sally, being a young lady, did not understand how to check under the hood or what to look for. She was bamboozled and she asked to get her money back and they refused. So basically what they would usually do in a situation like that where somebody missed a payment is they would repossess the car, they'd clean it up, resell it. It's Clean it, rinse up, repeat, the whole thing. But in this case, they couldn't resell it because the car had died. They just refused to refund her money and the $1,000 that she'd put in on this car. She came to our firm, so we brought a class action against them because we had heard of a large number of complaints. And indeed, the Attorney General's office had a large number of complaints against these people, so we felt like we could establish the elements of a class action lawsuit against them. Now, what goes into a class action lawsuit? Well, the first thing that happened is they removed it to federal court. And federal court rules are hard and somewhat inflexible. There are 4 things you have to establish in a class action lawsuit. And they are numerosity, typicality, commonality, and fair representation. Now I know what you're thinking. What did he just say? Numerosity. You have to show that it would be a big pain, essentially, to name all of the people who have a claim. In fact, you may not even know all the people who have a claim. Normally, if you have more than about 19 or 20 people, and we could demonstrate that there were at least 45 complaints against this dealership, well, then you have numerosity. So we had numerosity. Then you have this issue of typicality. In other words, the plaintiff had to be injured each of the plaintiffs had to be injured in the same way, either through the sale of a defective vehicle or through this rinse and repeat scam. And if the injuries are typical, then you can go and proceed. And then commonality. Commonality refers to common questions of law and fact. In other words, in this case, the action was brought under the auspices of the Merchandising Practices Act, which is a Deceptive Practices Act, and we could show that there were common deceptive practices used by this dealership. So we believed we had commonality, and because we were an upstanding law firm, we believed we could demonstrate fair representation. In addition to establishing numerosity, typicality, commonality, and fair representation, you have to show either that varying adjudications could leave people with the same issues treated differently, or you have to show that the adjudications that would come, in your case, would be dispositive of the rights of the other people in the class. And you have to show that the defendant acted on grounds that were generally applicable to the class, and that common questions of law or fact predominate. In other words, it can't be an issue of there being one common question of law or fact, and all the other questions are individual to each one of the claimants. So we sued under Chapter 407 of the Revised Missouri Statutes, the state's little FTC law, where you don't have to show all of the badges of fraud. You have to show a material loss that was caused by an unlawful or a deceptive practice. And we believed we had that in spades, let me tell you. Well, one of the things that the federal court had just started doing was, before it ever progressed to motion practice, they insisted on sending it out for mediation. Now, mediation is a situation where you get somebody who is neutral, like a judge. A lot of times retired judges are the people who do this. And you go and the plaintiff says, this is what happened, this is what we believe, we think we are entitled to X number of dollars. And the defense comes in and says, those guys are full of beans, we don't think we owe them a dime, in fact, we'd like to get our expenses. So the mediator then looks at the claims and the defenses and offers up his analysis. And one of the things that he mentioned to me was that we probably could not prove typicality. And that was because the dealership was just unbelievably genius in all of the different ways that they scammed these buyers. They would overcharge for different things. They would sell extended warranties and then refuse to honor the warranty because the warranty always had a little, I would call it a catch, that would make it inapplicable to any really serious repair. There were just scads of different ways that this dealership injured the financial interests of all of the claimants in that case. So after thinking about it, I admitted, okay, I think we probably may have a problem with typicality. I didn't want to admit we couldn't prove it, but okay, let's face it, I couldn't prove it. So the mediator says, look, you've got a class action. You're not going to be able to proceed with the class action. You've got Sally as your main client. You got a couple of other clients. Why don't I see if I can get each of them some money? So he went back and he came back with an offer of $500. We told him that was not going to settle the deal. He said, well, I'm not sure they're going to give any more than that. And I said, well, that may very well be, but there will be a price to pay. They're going to wind up having to pay a lawyer because I'm not giving up on anything. And they're going to have to brief everything. And if I lose, I'm going to take them up on appeal. And the mediator said, well, you're kind of serious about this, aren't you? And I'm like, there's no other way to practice law. You got to be serious. So he went back, and eventually they came up with an amount of money that was reasonably compensatory for the clients. And instead of taking the 40% contingent fee that I was entitled to, I worked out a deal where the other side paid my attorney's fee. And that worked out really well for the clients, not so much for my firm. They didn't get as much as we really should have gotten. But part of the job of being a lawyer is taking care of your clients. And you have to take care of them properly. And so that's what I did. Now, the individual cases were settled for an amount that was confidential, but Sally was able to get a real car from a real dealer as a result of that. It was a used car, and it had some high mileage on it, but it was dependable, and she was able to finish nursing school as a result of that. So I felt pretty good about the outcome of that case. This is what's good about class action lawsuits. They can take a lot of people who have smaller claims. In this case, the claims were fairly small. Very, very few of them had more than $5,000 in damages. And you can aggregate them and you can get a just result. But if you can't meet all of the requirements of the class action, it's better to proceed in small claims court individually against these people than it is to ever go through a class action, because class actions, they're sort of like elephants giving birth. It takes a long time and there is a lot of pain involved. I don't consider class actions to be the best vehicle when there's only a few people injured. But when there are a lot of people injured, it is almost always the best vehicle, particularly if they're injured in the same way through the same illicit process. Well, that's what I have for you today on class actions. If you have any questions, you can put them in the comments down below. Like, share, subscribe. Whatever you feel like you need to do, just remember to please keep it civil. And again, if you would like to, you can email me at the address above if you have questions. Or if you'd like to see a video get made, please feel free to do that. And then, when you're done, come on back down here and meet me at the beach next time. If you like this video, here are a few others you might try, and don't forget to subscribe. Have a terrific day, guys.